Yeah. This is episode 42 of the Carlos Whittaker podcast. It is Thursday, October 31st, Halloween. Boo! 2024. I got one single question for y'all. Y'all ready for this? Ha, let's go. Hey. Now, if you're just listening and you're not watching on Spotify or YouTube, that was the greatest y'all ready for this I've ever done. Because although it is Halloween, that simply means that tomorrow I start putting up my Christmas decorations. And I'm drinking out of my Santa mug right now as we fade Dr. Delight out because it's Christmas in my life now. Halloween's over. Well, it's not over. It's Halloween when you're listening to this, unless you're listening to it later. And as Halloween goes away, let's go ahead and bring in... Oh, yeah. Oh, I actually brought in the end of a song. Here we go. Yes. Welcome to the holidays. I am grateful to be drinking coffee out of my Christmas mug because an Insta Familia member actually sent me this. If you can see, it says, I run on coffee and Christmas cheer. This is going to end up upstairs somewhere during Christmas season. And today is a great day on Halloween for us to just move right past Halloween and into the Christmas cheer spirit. And so I've got an interview today that I'm going to be bringing to you. Last few weeks, it's just been me, but I'm going to be interviewed already, a hero of many of ours. He has taken an idea and turned it into a incredible work. The idea was taking the Bible and turning it into something that we can digest. It's called The Chosen. Today, I am interviewing Dallas Jenkins, but not about The Chosen. It's Christmas. We're interviewing him about his new movie, The Best Christmas Pageant Ever, based on a novel by Barbara Robinson. Y'all remember the Herdmans, like the worst kids in the world. Dallas is going to dive into why he made this movie. I'm going to dive into how incredible the movie is. And you're going to quickly realize that Dallas Jenkins loves Christmas just as much as I do. So we become fast friends, and I think you're going to love this interview. So, Carlos Whittaker Podcast, amigos and amigas, enjoy this conversation with The Chosen's, the director, the creator, the writer, all of it, Dallas Jenkins. Hey, Dallas, how are you?
Hey, Carlos. Thanks so much for having me on. It's great to finally talk to you.
Absolutely. We've got a lot of friends in common. All my friends love you. So I was like, well, it's about time that I meet Dallas because everyone else loves him. So I'll love you too.
I will do as much as I can to live up to the promise.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm excited just to be able to talk to you for my podcast about the best Christmas pageant ever. My listeners know that I am a Christmas freak. Like I'm the Griswold yard in my neighborhood.
Oh, cool.
And so before we even get into the best Christmas pageant ever, I need to know like where your excitement about Christmas lands. Are you like a Christmas dude? Are you a fall guy? Where do you land in the spectrum?
If Christmas could be year round, that would be my happy place.
Yes.
I'm not the Griswold decoration thing just because I'm a moron and don't know how to do any of that stuff.
Right.
So no one wants me to try to set up Christmas lights. But yeah. I absolutely love it. My favorite movie of all time is It's a Wonderful Life. I watch it every year. Everything about Christmas is my jam. And I also prefer cold weather to hot weather. So
okay.
I'm all about it. And it's absolutely one of the reasons why I'm so drawn to this project. But yeah, I've been all about Christmas for as long as I can remember.
I love it. Well, that's great. So we should get along here.
Yeah.
Tell me just about kind of the origins of when you were like, you know what, the best Christmas pageant ever, that book, I'm going to make that thing a movie.
So when I was a kid, I had a memory of having read the book. It's been in public schools for 50 years. Yeah. And it's been like, when you're a kid and you get those scholastic book order forms and stuff.
Yes.
So this has been part of that for a long time. And then it was a small TV movie in the early 80s. And I remember seeing it when I was in youth group as a little kid. But I didn't remember a whole lot about it. I just knew it was a Christmas story and the gist of it. Well, 20 years ago, and I have it right here, my wife brought this exact book home. This is the actual copy that she brought home and said, you know what, I remember this book as a kid. We should read it to our kids. And it's fairly short. So I sit down and I'm reading it to my kids. And the first few chapters, I'm laughing. It's very witty. It's very well done. Yeah. Very smart. Got a lot of good Christmas nostalgia. But it's set in a church. And I remember thinking while I'm reading it, I'm like, well, this is interesting because I read this in public school. Like, and this seems pretty churchy, like, but not in a bad way, but like oh, interesting. Yeah. It's fun to read a mainstream book that's about that. I get to the last chapter, and Carlos, I'm telling you, this is not an exaggeration. I couldn't read. I was crying so hard. I was like tears streaming down my face, ugly crying. I actually have the chapter open. I'm not going to read it because I'll start crying again. But I'm crying so hard. My wife goes, all right, give me the book. She takes it. She starts reading. She starts weeping, hands it back to me. We basically are just playing hot potato while we're trying to recover. Yeah. And so as I'm reading it, it's the story of the 6 herdmans who are the worst kids in the history of the world. That's the opening line of the book. The first line of the book is the herdmans were absolutely the worst kids in the history of the world. And because they were mean and they were bullies and if you're in a church world and if you're putting on a church Christmas pageant, right, the herdmans are other, right? They are absolutely. They don't know the story. They've probably, we find out they've never heard it. And so they don't belong in our perfect world where we put on this nice, precious nativity scene, which we all know was white people with beautiful smiles, with angels, you know, and you're like, that's what they had in their heads. And that's, of course, as you know, not the actual story. So when these kids hijack the pageant and they take over the Christmas pageant because they heard there was going to be snacks, their outsider status, their poverty, their unique questions because they haven't taken the story for granted like everybody else, allows them to see the story more clearly. And in fact, because of their poverty, they're probably closer to the heart of the true story than the rest of the characters. And that just so spoke to me. And so I love the Christmas of it all. I love the kids. I love the humor mixed with pathos. And I closed the book and I said, I have to make this movie.
Can I remind all of you what it was like for me before I started using Shopify? I can't remember what the service was that I used, but I basically had to learn HTML coding myself. I had to like build a website myself. They kind of helped, but no, they didn't. So like I spent 2 days trying to figure out just how to say like, hi, buy this on a button. And then I had to like get another website that I had to like connect to that HTML shopping page that was like a shopping cart. And then it's like, okay, sweet, they will take the money. But then I had to like connect another page with a bank to be able to set to the shopping cart, which was able to go to the shopping page. It just was a disaster. That's why I'm grateful for Shopify. Shopify can get you up and selling in like 10 minutes, legitimately. It is so fast. It's so easy. It works. It literally works, and you can start building your income with your side hustle right now or with your main hustle, okay? Shopify compares so much better to what I was doing. So listen, you can upgrade your business and get the same checkout we use with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Carlos, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Carlos to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Carlos.
This is the movie that I was born to make. In fact, in this copy of the book, obviously, if you're listening, you can't see this, but if you can see me, I've actually got notes written for things I wanted to do if I ever got a chance to make it as a movie. And most of them I actually ended up doing. So for 15 years, I pursued the rights. And I would every year check in with the rights holders. I Googled who owned the rights, and they had it set up with other studios and big time directors. And I actually put in my calendar on my phone and my computer 3 words: pray for pageant. And once a week, it would pop up and I would be reminded to pray. And honestly, I would like to tell you that I prayed for God's will to be done and that I would be okay no matter what the circumstances. But I was like, God, don't let anyone else make this movie. Like, I just felt.
Yes, that's it.
Like, I just felt, I knew that I was born to make this. And I felt like God put it on my heart. But of course, you never know. And you just want to, you want to be able to be okay with whatever God does. But I was like, this is my movie. I have to do it. Well, a few years ago, I check in again, and the rights were back in their hands, and they said, we're considering this new studio and new director. And I'm like, please don't do it. Please let me have it. And they ultimately told me no.
Wow.
And I thought, it's over. And I went to my wife, Amanda, who had also been so passionate about the book. And I told her, they said no, and I think it's over. And we were upset. We cried. And I went back to my office, and I sit down, and bing, pops up, pray for pageant. And I put my...
After you got the no.
I just got the no, and it popped, the reminder pops up taunting me again.
Love it. Love it.
I put my hand on the mouse, and I'm sliding the cursor to hit the delete button because I can't do it anymore. I can't keep praying for this thing. I can't keep hoping for this thing. It's over. And as I'm about to click delete, I just felt the Lord very clearly just say, no, not yet. Don't do that. And that's happened a handful of times in my life where you just really feel like it's not an audible voice, but you know it's God. And I was like, okay. So I didn't delete it. And I'm like, all right, pray for pageant. So I'm like, okay, God, please just whatever your will is, I pray that I will be, and I'm just like going through the motions, not happy about it. And my wife walks in and she says, I was just praying about this and I was upset and I felt God put it on my heart. It's not over yet. And I was like, oh, don't tell me that. I don't want to get my hopes up again. So I kept praying. Sure enough, long story short, well, this has already been a long story, sorry, but
I love it.
Just a couple of years ago, I checked in again and I said, all right, it's time for my annual check-in. I know it's at this other studio, but just letting you know I'm still passionate. And he goes, it's funny, the studio forgot to renew the rights and the rights expired just a few days ago. And he said, and I'm like thinking, okay. And he said, and you know what? My mom called me the day after the rights lapsed and she goes, have you heard of this show called The Chosen?
No.
And he goes, oh, that's funny. The creator of The Chosen is constantly bugging me, trying to get me to let him do the best Christmas pageant ever. And she goes, you better give him the rights. Are you crazy? He's the only one who can make this movie. And he goes, well, I have to listen to my mom, so let's talk. And now, Carlos, as I'm talking to you and saying the words, the best Christmas pageant ever is a movie coming to theaters that I made. That in and of itself is, I wouldn't say dream come true, but maybe I'd say calling fulfilled. And it's just such a, it's such a, I don't know, I'm so grateful that I get a chance to have this conversation with you about this movie because I've been so passionate about it for so long.
Well, I love that, the way God is in the details of all of those things. You were highlighting some of the themes from the movie. And, I think Christmas is amazing and we can feel all the feel good feelings, but some of those things you were talking about are like, I think really heavy subjects that the church sometimes turns a blind eye to. How do you feel like this movie, I think a lot of people are gonna be like, oh, this is just it's for my kids. It's for, gosh, when you were talking, I'm like, no, I think every pastor needs to watch this movie because I feel like even these kids can teach the church some things about how to church well. What are your thoughts on that?
That's the beauty of this story. And that's what I tried to capture in the movie. And what I've heard from those who've seen it so far is that very thing, which is, of course, the Herdmans, because of their exposure to the Christmas story and their opportunity to play these roles and their community that they get from doing this pageant, that they're not getting from home, that they're not getting because they're in poverty and on the wrong side of the tracks and absentee parents. So that's great. And that's good. And there's humor in that and there's pathos in that. And that's wonderful. But the church, and I say this in the movie, without trying to give too much away, but the church realizes they've taken this story for granted. And not only have they not seen the true nativity story for what it is, which is that Jesus was also an outsider and born into poverty and came as a humble servant and not as a conquering king. And that the truth of it was probably a lot more raw and authentic than these little precious moments nativity stories we put together. But also they realize, you know what? If we truly believe that unto us a child was born and that we are to be the hands and feet of Jesus today because of that, what does that look like? And so this movie is a love letter to moms who volunteer at church, sometimes even more than dads do, to pastors who see troubled children for who they are, people, an opportunity to be the hands and feet of Jesus. And so wrapped in this mainstream Hollywood theatrical release that's coming out all over the country, and it looks fun and it could be a Christmas classic. It's nice, but this movie is a Jesus movie. This is a unto you a child is born movie. And we haven't had that in a really long time.
No, we haven't had that in a really long time. And to be able to, I think one of the things that I found fascinating is you were like, this book has been in public schools for so long, like it's not like a hidden book that, you have to find in your Southern Baptist library,
right.
Downstairs of your church. Like this is a story that lots and lots and lots of people, Jesus followers and people that may be just curious, have read.
What's interesting is I would say that anecdotally speaking, I'd say it's more popular in the mainstream than it even is in the church. It's been performed as a play all over the world. And that's why when I read the book, even though I'd read it as a kid but didn't remember a whole lot of it, I was like, where has this been? How did I not know about this beautiful Jesus story that's wrapped in this seemingly innocuous, Christmas classic? And I use the term Trojan horse sometimes because it on the surface, it's, you look at the poster, you look at the trailers, and you can see a little bit of the elements that I brought to it and that's in the book about Jesus and the birth of Christ. But it looks like a normal movie. And sometimes movies that come from people like myself, people of strong faith, they have a feel to it. They look like or feel like Christian movies. And sometimes that feels exclusionary or turns people off, or sometimes it just carries with it a certain baggage. And yet I'm like, this feels and looks like a normal movie. And yet I'm telling you, and I know your listeners need to hear this, and I want you to know that this is not a watered down message of the Nativity. This is the gospel just put into a beautiful Christmas movie package.
That's so good. I can only fathom, again, I'm not a filmmaker, but I'm sitting here going, okay, you loved the book, your family loved the book, your wife loved the book. Now it's like you're about to pick these kids to represent what's the first line of the movie again?
The Herdmans were absolutely the worst kids in the history of the world.
Okay, so Dallas is now like, you're chosen, to choose the worst kids in the history of the world. Like, how was that process of finding the perfect cast for this?
Yeah, it was actually really fun. And here's a couple of cool things that I think you'd appreciate stood out to me was we saw hundreds of hours of auditions, and the best kids for these roles started to emerge. And that was really cool. And finding kids who can do both the humor, which is very much a important part of this movie, but also the emotion and the vulnerability is very, very difficult. And it's tough for adults to pull off, but for kids especially. So we found some amazing kids that I think God brought to this project. The other cool thing that was of note to me was in so many of the auditions, they were mispronouncing names and terms that we take for granted because we know the story so well. And their parents who are reading off camera are the same. And I'm realizing, and Amanda's realizing, my wife, she started crying looking at some of the auditions because she's like, oh, some of these kids and their families, they don't know the story either.
Yeah.
And so this is an opportunity. This movie is more important than ever because nowadays there are, and you and I might completely take that for granted. We can't believe that there could be people who don't know the true Christmas story. So that became a really, in some ways it was sad, but in the other ways it was really exciting that this is a movie that's going to be in theaters all over the country like a normal movie, and families are going to go see it because it's a family film and it's around Christmas and holiday time. It opens in early November. So it's the holiday season, and some people are going to see it, perhaps seeing the Nativity story for the first time. And that's just a really cool opportunity.
That's amazing. You have a lot of your life's work has been with The Chosen. And, this is I'm not a pivot. There's still cameras. There's still, actors and actresses, but talk to us a little bit. What did you maybe bring from The Chosen over into the best Christmas pageant ever? Obviously, a lot of people love The Chosen, my family included. So, we're like, oh, Dallas is doing a Christmas movie. Like, what are some things that maybe Chosen people that have loved watching The Chosen will be like, oh, this feels right? Yeah.
Well, at the end of the day, yes, it's movies that's set 2,000 years after the setting of The Chosen. So it looks different. It's very different stylistically. But like you said, at the end of the day, you got cameras, actors, crew. Within those 12 hours, I'm just trying to serve the story and serve God the best way that I can. That said, the common thread between The Chosen and the best Christmas pageant ever is that in both cases, I am trying to remove the veil that we have put up between us and the authentic story of Jesus and his birth and his life. And some people will say to me with The Chosen, oh, you're giving us a more relevant Jesus. And I'm like, I'm not giving you anything. I'm removing and revealing the Jesus that he really was that we oftentimes hide because of our religiosity, because of our stained glass windows or statues or our sins or vices or our idols that we put up. And so with the best Christmas pageant ever, I think that's the main through line that is connected to The Chosen, is that these kids are seeing the story from a different perspective. And you realize it's different from what I'm used to, but it's probably more true than what I normally am used to and how I see this story. And I think that's what a lot of people, when they watch The Chosen, go, I'll hear a lot of people say, I never thought of it that way. Or it was words on a page. And especially people from certain faith backgrounds that are maybe more formal or more behavior based. They're like, Jesus for me was always a little distant, or he was someone that I revered so much that I respected so much, which is good, but I don't know that I had a personal relationship. And through the show, I've realized that I can have a personal relationship, and it's brought me back to the scriptures. And that's what this movie does, is these kids on the wrong side of the tracks are like, wait a minute. Mary wore a bright blue and white outfit in a barn while she's delivering a baby, and they're putting him in a feeding trough. Wait a minute. What? Yeah. And they understood it because they're in poverty more than us, kind of in our safe suburban perspective.
Yes.
And so that's what I'm hoping to do with all the projects, is to reveal and to remind us of who Jesus really is.
Well, I just want to say thank you for following the calling in your life. It's impacted so many, my family included, and just grateful to be able to chat with you. Everybody needs to go watch this movie. It is going to be incredible. I can't wait to take my family to see as well. So thanks for hanging out with me today, Dallas.
Thanks so much, Carlos. I'm glad we finally got a chance to do this, and we'll do it again sometime.
Absolutely.
All right. Bye-bye.
How good was that? Dallas, thanks for the work that you did. I don't know how he has just the capacity to do what he does, but he is encouraging me in his creativity and in his pursuit of sharing Jesus in a way that is palpable for everybody. Jesus himself was talking to people that didn't understand who he was. And I love that Dallas is helping people understand who Jesus is, who didn't know who he was. And that truly is the reason for the season. So I'm grateful for Dallas and all he has done. Hey, thank you, Carlos Whittaker Podcast listeners. Make sure that you jump back in here next week for another episode of the Carlos Whittaker Podcast.